I'm Lorna Dueck, and you and I each have a story. And so do the celebrities, politicians, and show business royalty who found themselves here in Studio 42. When we put our stories together and stand back, a bigger picture emerges of who we are, what we want, the worst and the best of ourselves. Join me now as we tell the story of 2013 through the headlines, the newsmakers, the trendsetters, and some common people with extraordinary stories of their own. Through it all, we have relentlessly asked a question you rarely hear. Where is God in all of this? So stick around for a heaven's eye view of the events of this past year and see what picture emerges for you. This is Context, a look at 2013 beyond the headlines. What do you make of a year where the Canadian Senate would dominate the headlines? Bombing and terror would overtake the Boston Marathon, and a Kenyan shopping mall destroyed in bombing terror. When the words peace and Iran might populate the same sentence. And by year's end, all of it, every headline, would be muted by one of those oh-so-rare moments when the passing of a single human being stops the world in its tracks, as presidents, prime ministers, and royalty struggled to forge just the right words of tribute. And lodged somewhere between tragedy, comedy, and personal implosion was Rob Ford, mayor of the largest city in the land. Our panel of political veterans reflected on the public appetite for scandal and the declining civility in political discourse.
My experience of the last 5 years was that there was very little contact across party lines at all. I think you've seen a
different era.
I think you've seen a decline, and what I notice is there's this distinction, I think, between adversaries and enemies.
Yeah.
You're in a different party, Mr. Epps in a different party, but I would never in a million years think of any of you guys as enemies. But we have a politics of enemies, and I think we need to get back to a politics of adversaries. That is, opponents who compete, but accept each other's good faith, good clean shot, but nothing below the belt, basic rules. And I think we've tipped in the 5 years that I was in the House of Commons, we lost that. And I think we've lost something over the 30 years that you were in the House of Commons.
That afforded us a chance to dig deeper when Bill Blakey, a pastor and veteran of more than 30 years in politics, put the Rob Ford story in a Christian perspective. Would the teachings of Jesus have something for this political climate?
Well, I mean, I think the whole biblical tradition teaches us something about politics, whether it's the teachings of Jesus or the prophets, or where we look to other stories and narratives for advice about politics. The one thing that comes to my mind, of course, is with respect to mercy, is that mercy is something that can be extended. And I think to some degree, and I've only watched it from a distance, but I've watched it like everybody else on TV. I mean, to the extent that people have been able to cut the mayor a lot of slack about the fact that this is personal problems, he should get treatment, he should do this. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. I mean, people have been trying to show him mercy, and he has refused it.
Sometimes you need to work to see politics through the lens of faith. Other times, faith and politics collide, and the shockwaves are felt nationwide. As Quebec MP Marc Garneau told me, Quebec's so-called Charter of Values, a masterpiece of xenophobic secular conformism, was met with nationwide indignation. You saw thousands march in Montreal to oppose this. You're writing, Muslims, Sikhs, and Jews are particularly troubled, calling it discrimination. Can civil liberties and religious freedoms actually be revoked with the stroke of this charter pen?
Well, it would be extremely short-sighted if Quebec tried to approach this with a heavy hand. We hope that they won't. They've talked about a 5-year grace period, if I can say that, because there has been such a reaction to it, and particularly here in Montreal, where we are very used to seeing people wear their religious symbols, and nobody gets worked up about it. If the government does it, it will have not only an effect of branding Quebec as a place that wants to isolate itself, people will be thinking twice about coming because they'll be concerned about not being able to express themselves freely.
Through our multi-faith panel and passionate audience members, we learned more about the intense personal connection between faith and the symbols we wear. Balpreet Singh of the World Sikh Organization of Canada put it this way.
The significance of the turban means dignity, means self-respect, but one thing that most people would be surprised to know is that it also represents gender equality. It reinforces that at a time when the Sikh faith was formed, women covered their heads, or it was considered important for them to show humility and respect. But the Sikh Guru said, if that's important for women, then it's equally important for men. So both men and women shall cover their heads.
And it means the hand of God on your head.
Correct. So it's, in a way, representing God being with me at all times. So it's not a symbol, it's an article of my faith, and it's a part of who I am. So I can't separate myself from my turban.
Through our exploration of the Quebec Charter of Values, it became clear that religious symbols are much more than a fashion ornament. They're a tool for connecting our hearts and minds to our Maker. We've heard all faiths say, this connects me to my God.
That's right.
What is it about a symbol that connects you to the unseen reality of God?
The symbols connect us to deeper realities that are sometimes hard to speak of just in words or with concepts. Much of our faith is mysterious and hard to grasp, and symbols touch us at deeper levels and help us to access those deeper realities.
It was known in the Philippines as Yolanda and internationally as Haiyan, recorded as the strongest typhoon ever to make landfall. Its sustained winds reached speeds faster than most Formula One race cars. The death toll reached well into the thousands, and for many, many more, a life struggle began for clean water, medical attention, shelter, clothing, and food. In many places, impassable roads made immediate aid impossible. And as with any crisis, it revealed the worst and the best of God's children. When Typhoon Haiyan struck its blow, it moved the Canadian Filipino community into action, like this Toronto parish that pulled hundreds of their communities of professionals, nannies, and service workers to care.
As of now, right, people are still hungry, and they still need all the help that we can, extend to them. Because right now, the relief efforts, the in-kind donations have not reached them.
Mobilized by their lead priest, whose own family barely escaped alive.
Mother is already 84 years old, and according to Mother, this is the strongest typhoon she has ever experienced in her life. My nephews and nieces are so scared that every time there is rain and wind, they run to their mothers and hug them and say, "Mama, is it going to happen again?"
How many have died in the area of your family?
More than 200 have lost their lives, and it sends shivers to my spine because 12 years ago I was there during the Typhoon Haiyan. The Ormoc tragedy were 8,000 drowned, and I was there as relief operations manager, and just looking at the decomposing bodies, it doesn't make me feel good at all.
In a time like this, people say, God, couldn't you have protected us better? How do we answer the question of God's care?
There are a lot of questions. One is, why did this happen to us? And especially the poor people. We are good, we are poor, and why is it that we are experiencing this? Of course, these questions cannot be answered directly. But the thing is, there are lots of people who are being touched by God to help them. They may not see God directly, but to the faces of people who have been moved to help, and the outpouring of generosity of people all over the world, especially in Canada, is a manifestation of God's presence in the world. So I believe that this is but also an opportunity for the manifestation of the loving presence of the Lord through the instrumentality of our fellow human beings.
In the teeth of catastrophe, we're reminded that humans are by no means the most powerful force on this planet. And despite that storm and its aftermath, the world's attention was easily diverted to the comic opera at Toronto City Hall. which is my way of bringing you into the conversation by way of our own Sheldon Neal.
Yes, Lorna, and our question for you at home is about the media, and that does include us. Does the media do a good job of choosing which stories get attention? Some people would say people want stories about Rob Ford, so that's what they should get, right? Others say that draws attention away from stories such as the relief effort in the Philippines and the growing need of refugees. So what do you think? Please send us your answers by phone, email, Facebook, or Twitter.
Coming up, from a royal baby to a Canadian rock star in orbit, to tragedies just 2 weeks apart that shook our entire nation. Our 2013 in Review continues.